Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Saturday Morning Comic Review. I'm your host, Dylan Wallace. Today, we got a great issue for you guys. It's going to be a bit of an omega for this one. I really only got a chance to get through some backlogs. I had all the intentions in the world to try to do an omega for this week, but I just didn't get an opportunity to record, and I didn't get to the comic book shop until Friday. I'm recording Friday. I'll get it posted on Saturday. So with that, it's just going to be mostly backlog stuff that you get for today. So just kind of keep that in mind, but give everyone an update as far as like where things are at, with the move and buying the house and everything. So we're all good on the sell side. That should go forward, really no problem. But on the buy side, we're running into issues with the inspection and going back and forth with the seller, trying to see like, can we get this for the price that we needed to without him just frankly being an asshole? So TBT on that. I think we're close here. And then we're also seeing potentially some other stuff because we're still in that phase of like due diligence. That could come online as well. So all that to say, I was thinking I may have had to make an announcement here of, this show going on a hiatus because the new house, obviously with all that, projects, this, that, and the other, just eats up a lot of money super early on. But with now this little hiccup, now I'm wondering, it's like, okay, well, the other stuff that we're seeing on the market, it's actually a lot cheaper. And so maybe I can kind of just keep the hobby going and continue to post the podcast in the back end as well. So kind of TBD, but as of right now, nothing's really changing. But I'll keep you guys posted just so you're aware of everything. And honestly, it's a little cathartic for me to just kind of talk through it all, to be honest with you. But yeah, right now, just kind of keep it going. The plan is then hopefully we do an Omega for next week, and that gets us caught up because it was 10 books that we had for the polls, but still a lot of packing, right? So I film all this in and record in the basement, and just looking around, it was like, oh my gosh, there's so much stuff to go through that we've accumulated over these 8 years living in this home. So now we're at the stage of like, okay, like, do we want to keep it? Do we want to try to sell it? Do we want to donate this thing? Or is it just garbage? So like sorting through those piles, we're not quite halfway, but almost halfway through the basement, which is going to be the biggest challenge. And then you go on to the rest of the house. So anyways, that's the rigmarole and what's happening in my world, but we can go ahead, dive into the show. We got the polls, of course, for this week. Then we'll get to the review section, and then we'll end with the polls for next week. So let's go ahead and start with those polls. And as always, we like to start with the picks of the week. So top 5 as listed out on League. Number 1, not surprising at all, DC Marvel, Superman, Spider-Man, issue number 1. 33% of the vote. So that's a great sign to see. I feel like the last crossover where you had Batman and Deadpool wasn't as good, but either way, I think it still ended up being number 1. It's going to be the most popular thing, right? So before the Batman and Deadpool team up, there's been quite a wide gap since the last time that you had the big two working together. So I think a lot of people were on board for this. So that has 33% of the vote. Then in the number 2 spot, it's going to be Absolute Wonder Woman number 18 with 17% of the vote. Absolute Martian Manhunter number 10 with 13% of the vote. Superman number 36 with 11, and then The Flash 31 with 4% of the vote. So of those 5, I have 3 of them on my poll list. Those are the top 3 as well, which is great to see. Love to, anytime it's a majority, I will take it. So with that, we'll go to the polls here. We have 10 in total, so perfect from an episode perspective. And everything I believe here is, yes, all current, which is great. So we are pulling Absolute Martian Manhunter issue number 10, Absolute Wonder Woman issue number 18, that DC Marvel Superman Spider-Man crossover, Hyde Street issue number 11, Iron Man 3. I actually have the variant cover rather than that one. Minor Arcana issue number 15, Skinbreaker number 7, Ultimate Endgame number 3, Void Rivals number 28, and then World Tree issue number 19. So those will be the 10 books we'll eventually get to. Again, the goal is to hopefully be able to post that for an Omega. We'll just see how crazy things are for the week. But with that, I think we could go ahead and jump into the review. So overall, 9 for this that we have to review. Not quite 10, but that's what I was able to get through. It's just 9 in total. If this is your first time popping in, I appreciate it, but I'll just read off everything for the audio folks so you know what order the books are going to be reviewed. So we have Absolute Batman issue number 18. Then we have the Ultimates issue number 22. Kill All Immortals number 2, issue number 3. The Power Fantasy issue number 16. G.I. Joe number 20, dope cover right there. Love that one. And then Saga, this is issue, 53. Poison Ivy issue number 21, that's what it is. Echolands issue number 5. And then the conclusion here to Fables, which is the 12th issue in this trade, is what I'm trying to say. This is issue number 162. So those are the 9 books that we will be reviewing in that order, just in case you want to bounce around to a review you're more interested in. We'll start off here with Absolute Batman issue number 18. As a quick reminder, as always, these books and reviews are filled with spoilers, so just keep that in mind. If you don't want spoilers in your review, it's just not going to be the show for you. But I will try to catch you up on the story as best as I can. We'll go through the story itself in the review. We'll talk about the league score. We'll talk about my score. I'll show off some of the artwork for the video, folks, and then I'll let you know whether or not this is a good one to jump into. So that's the format, and we'll go through each and every single issue that way. Absolute Batman issue number 18 here, and I realize I did not score it. A little rusty here. So I gave this one a 4. League gave it a 4.4. And, you know, the reason I gave it a little bit lower of a score here is I do like the conclusion and like the arc that we're going on here, but I think overall for me, the balance of this issue was like a back and forth battle that, yes, it had some good artwork, but I wasn't super interested in what was happening kind of on the peripheral. It's kind of hard to explain, but I'm going to do my best here. Is we have a similar dynamic that's been repeating itself throughout Absolute Batman. So maybe just getting a little bit long in the tooth of like, can Batman overcome this? No, it doesn't look like he can. Now suddenly he's able to, and then he eventually overcomes it. Kind of a typical superhero trope. I get it, but the way that it's written and the style of it is like, okay, I've seen you do this with literally every single villain thus far, and it kind of continues that way. Now the kicker at the end here. So he's fighting Poison Ivy. She's taken over kind of the center of Gotham. Has this huge, enormous infected tree with all these spores, and then a whole bunch of other people are infected. And the way that they've drawn her as this like crazy monster that has like taken over biologically, like a whole bunch of different elements and fungi, and it's this one enormous Frankenstein monstrosity is the best way to describe it. And so as he's fighting her, gets to the point where he realizes the only thing that's still organic, if you will, or still like untouched is her heart, but it actually isn't her heart. It's her mother's who died, and she took the heart of her deceased mother and then like joined it with her own or made it her own, but everything else around her is all infected and you know, touched by whatever disease except for that heart. And so what Batman does is, in order to take her out, he shoots her in the heart with it. And the reason he does it is not that Poison Ivy is going to die, because obviously using the gun and killing someone is like, whoa, antithesis of Batman. No, he does it because he knows that that is what's going to hurt her the most, because now that one untouched heart of her mother has now become infected. The only way she was going to survive is if she, you know, fully infected the heart and then made it part of herself, which she ends up doing, destroying all that remains of her mother. That then allows police officers to come in and go and arrest her, and it changes Batman from being this like, you know, saving Gotham, doing the right thing, so on and so forth, to just doing whatever it takes to get the job done. I love the perspective of it. That is cool. However, the lead up to the fight was like, maybe not so much. So I ended up going with a 4 flat. The other piece that is weird, and we need to just see how it all ties in, is Bruce's mother apparently is part of the Court of Owls, and specifically a Talon, which seems like this super spy, assassin, ninja person as part of it. And it looks like she's about to be taken out by the Court of Owls, but she convinces them to give her another shot, and they have a mission for her to do. So that also takes place too. Cool story for sure. Not the time to jump into. I think probably 19 will be the one, or if you could have jumped in at issue number 17 would have been better. The art style is definitely a step above, especially when you have Poison Ivy and all these, different tendrils and pustulous and noxious gases, and the way that they exaggerate what she looks like is pretty cool. I'll give them credit on that. It's just the story didn't quite get there for me until the conclusion of using the gun. Like, oh, that's insane. But of course, there's a loophole there of didn't actually kill her. Now she just absorbs that heart. And then here's a pretty cool splash page at the end here with Batman holding the axe, standing on top of one of the buildings in Gotham, looking down as this huge monster. Looks pretty cool, not gonna lie. So yeah, I ended up with a 4, but still very good. A high 4 for sure. Absolute Batman issue number 18. Again, I gave it a 4. League gave it a 4.4. Then next, the Ultimates issue number 12. Man, I enjoyed this book so much so it is going to be the comic of the week. Killer book. Awesome cover too. I'd say it's between this and G.I. Joe as cover of the week as well, with Red Skull on the front looking out, and then at the bottom you have Steve Rogers as Captain America looking down on the ground depressed, and then in between is a photo of when Bucky and Steve were fighting in World War II. So really cool cover, which is awesome. So I gave this one a 4.5. League gave it a 4.3. For me, I love the story that they told here. So as we know, with the Ultimates, they are trying their best to push back all the Makers' forces around the world. So Steve in particular, Captain America, is trying to push back the Red Skull and his army. And so he gets to the point where he is going for this final push, but sees all the chaos and the devastation happening around him. And so sure enough, Red Skull is Bucky from all these years ago, and they were partnered together. Basically, as they grew up, Bucky was a casualty of neglected, didn't get any veterans benefits. The whole world forgot about him. Then he's suddenly given a second chance, feels like this is his only hope. It overcomes him and consumes him, turns into the Red Skull. And then now, as Steve and the rest of the Ultimates and the Rebellion, they fight their way up. They finally get to Red Skull. He takes off the mask and realizes what he's done, apologizes. He's weeping and he's so sorry. And he's hugging Steve of can you ever forgive me? And Steve's I know you're sorry. And Steve ends up killing him anyways. Oh my goodness gracious. It was Of Mice and Men, so sad. And Steve's bawling as well. I was damn near crying towards the end of it too. Damn, we got two friends and the trajectory that they've taken. And Captain America just realizes you can't be saved. And it have to put you down. Oh, gut-wrenching. So I loved it from that storytelling perspective. What an incredible one shot is basically what it is. It's totally fine to go ahead and jump into here. I mean, you're going to you're going to miss out on the context of the greater overall what's happening in the Ultimate Universe, but you don't need it for this story for it to hit you in all the feels. So definitely worth checking out for this one. The art is excellent as well. It does, kind of my favorite thing where you have these panels overlapping with different characters and models and juxtaposition there. So, of course, I love that piece. Great action, tugging on the heartstrings, and towards the end here where he just has to go ahead and put him down. Oh, so sad. But excellent issue. So that's the Ultimates issue number 22. Again, I gave it a 4.5. League gave it a 4.3. So, from the highs to the lows, here we have Kill All Immortals, issue number 3. I should say Kill All Immortals 2, issue number 3. Such a confusing title whenever you put a number in front of the actual numbered issue in the series. But I gave it a 3.5. Lee gave it a 3.8 for this one. We're getting close to dropping it. I'm not quite there, but we're getting pretty close here. It's not nearly as good as the first run, but the premise is we have different gods who live in the real world, and they live off of a tree of life. And so they've amassed all this wealth throughout these years of being gods on Earth, and it's in a modern setting. So, they'd be like titans of industry, and they're like billionaires, right? So they have, the yachts, the homes, own all these businesses, so on and so forth. So in the first part of Kill All Immortals 1, it was all about the Asgardians trying to take out Odin in particular, as he was going crazy and basically getting revealed to the world potentially that these gods have this ability. They've been among us this whole time. They're just like us, and they can live on for eternity. So killed, they're just brought back to life from this tree of life. Well, at the end of that, the tree is destroyed in the first part, and then we come to realize there are more gods out there with different trees of life. Enter Genghis Khan and his family, and the Khan tree of life. So the Khans realize this now, and they're like, oh, there's a void now, and we can take over and destroy the Asgardians because their tree of life is gone. So if they're killed, they are now mortal. So they're trying to take advantage of that. Asgardians are on their back foot and trying to figure out what is their next plan in order to stay alive, and all this book is through the perspective of the Asgardians. One of the daughters of the Khans comes to the Asgardians and says, hey, I don't want my father to be, the dominant god of all of us on Earth. I'm going to help you to try to defeat him and go after their tree of life. So that was the setup from issue 2. Here in issue 3, they go and enact that plan. So they go after the tree of life. Turns out it was a trap. So they show up there. Genghis is there waiting for him. It's like, you really thought one of my daughters was going to betray me. Now it's your time to die. So it's a big old fight scene that takes place. And one of the Asgardians, I think it's Leaf in particular, is slain at the end of it. So we have all that take place. Meanwhile, Thor, who's also there too, he's like turned to a pacifist as well, so he doesn't even really want to participate. And a lot of it is through the perspective of Freya. So, it's interesting premise, but the storytelling is not that great in this one. So let's go ahead and show off the artwork so you can at least see what I'm talking about here. The first one, I was in love with it because the premise was like so interesting and it had the storytelling to back it up. This story here for number 2 is just not hitting the mark, and it's not really, it's tough to tell. Is it like the character development? Because it's not. I think it's the pacing that's off. It doesn't really give us a good understanding of, not necessarily the motives, but setting up these different characters and, what their motives are all about. It's just kind of like, all right, we're going after this plan. And it's very surface level of what it provides for a character development aspect. And I think that's a big piece that's missing. Whereas the first one mostly just surrounded Freya, and she was trying to expose her family. And this one is like, we have both families together, so the bunch of other characters, so you only get surface level of what they're actually trying to do. And I think that's to the detriment of the book, especially when this is now the sequel of what the former was. So now we're deviating from what the formula was on the first one, and it's suffering because of that. So that's the reason I'm pulling it back a little bit, and it is borderline drop, but we'll see. I'm going to keep it on for now. So that's Kill All Immortals 2, issue number 3. Again, I gave it a 3.5. Lee gave it a 3.8. Next up here is going to be the Power Fantasy. And man, I wanted to like this as much as League liked it, but I really did not. So League gave it a 4.7. That's a huge score for sure. I gave it a 3.5. I've never been this far off on this book, and usually the League score is incredibly high like this, and I'm right there with them. It was confusing the way that we put it together. I had to go back and maybe reread it and see like, okay, is this what they meant? Because if that's what they meant, I can see how people got to that score. And I was like going through the comments and everything, and like it wasn't quite jiving. So the fact that I had to chew on it a little bit to like piece it together to make it make sense, it still didn't necessarily change my score. But now that I've come to like the understanding of like, oh, I think this is what the book meant, it makes more sense to me as to why people came to that score. So let's talk through it. We have Power Fantasy is like X-Men turned up to 11, and like the whole planet is at jeopardy constantly just from a handful of people that have these superpowers. So we have Valentina, she's basically Superman, Wonder Woman mixed together. We have NTN, who's basically Professor X, just like an omni telepath. Then we have a couple of other tertiary characters, but Eliza, who's another important one, who is like think of her as like magic, basically. Just sold her soul to the devil, and she has like this crazy demonic ability. So most of the characters now are dead, except for Valentina, Eliza, and then a couple of the other smaller characters. And Eliza, this whole time, she made a deal with the devil in order to stop this alien about 20 years ago, and realized like how horrible it was. And so she's been praying to a god to like try to amend for her sins. And the whole time it wasn't God speaking to her, it was NTN speaking to her. But NTN's now dead. So now God is not answering her, and she's feeling like she's going mad, and it's not helping her control her demonic ability to the point now where all she can think of is like destroying the world. And that's where it gets to that point. So that catches you up here. Now it's Valentina who's the only one who can potentially stop her. And so Eliza goes insane, and she has like this explosive episode, and it destroys. It's like off the coast of the Atlantic, but it's close enough seaboard that it kills like tens of thousands of people, is how large this like blast radius is. But Valentina was able to control it and send her down like to hell. So banished, and it feels like mission accomplished. So Valentina goes up to celebrate onto the moon and look down at Earth. Just like grounds her, gives her perspective. Now, here's where I was confused, is I was like, oh, was this all in the same attack? But now I realized it's kind of parsed out of like, no, Eliza then came back stronger than ever. And then at that point, Valentina was on the moon and could not get to Eliza in time and destroys the entire planet. Earth completely gone and obliterated. So at that moment in time, Valentina is like, unacceptable, right? Like cannot suffer the loss of billions of people. And so almost instantaneously, she is able to go back in time, and you see her go back in time of all the different issues that we've gone through and this whole journey that we've been through to the very, very beginning in issue number 1, where she first met NTN. So this is going to be the end of this series here of this volume. And then the next volume, I assume, is just going to be a different timeline played out differently. I'd imagine with the same cast of characters, which is super interesting and sets it up in a fun, interesting way moving forward. Why was it a 3.5 for me? I would have liked it if we would have just ended it. I think that would have made it, not everything needs to continue on forever. And I think it would have been more courageous to just end it. That would have been fine. But this clearly sets up a cliffhanger that there's going to be more. So there's that aspect of it. And then I wasn't sure, like reading through it, I was confused with Eliza. I was like, oh, why is Valentina now on the moon? It wasn't clear to me that she was like banished, gone, mission accomplished, and then suddenly she came back. It just looked like Valentina took her out, went up to the moon, and then suddenly Eliza came back, and it's like, well, why did you position yourself way out on the moon? She just stayed on Earth, continued to fight her until she was dead. So that's the confusing part, and it took me a while to come to the realization through reading the comments, going back through it of like, oh, I'm an idiot. But I personally feel like if I don't get it right off the rip, that's not on me. And sometimes I feel like, okay, you're just being dense and like you need to give it a chance here. But it took a lot of research for me to come to the conclusion of like, oh, I see why people gave this a much higher score. A lot of research. So I was like, you know what? No, I'm going to stick with my guns here. And so it ends up being a 3.5 for me personally. But that's fine. Overall though, do I recommend the Power Fantasy? Absolutely. What a journey, what a ride. Obviously don't start here. Start at the very beginning. But very, very cool comic and series overall, and what a take on like kind of the X-Men and like these different powers and how powerful they are. So if you flip through on the art on this one is nuts. It's pretty cool. So here it's where Eliza was like kind of taken out at this point, goes up onto the moon, but this is where she comes back, I guess. So that's where it like just wasn't clear. And like the art for that of like this crazy looking, I don't even know, something out of Dungeons and Dragons Demogorgon looking thing, and just destroys the planet. And so this is where she then goes back in time, and you can see that going back through time here is everything that we've read before. And if you read it, like, oh yeah, for sure, that's like everything that they did before. And it's back to the beginning with her meeting NTN for the very first time, which is kind of crazy. So it's cool. Great story. It's a Kieran Gillen joint. Dope. Basically anytime I see his name now, I'm like, yeah, I think I'm going to want to read that. So he's kind of convinced me now with the Power Fantasy. So again, issue 16 gave it a 3.5, but Lee gave it a 4.7. Overall, the series, though, gets a 4.5 for sure. So next, we're going to go G.I. Joe, issue number 20. Also contender for the cover of the week. I gave this one a 4. League ended up giving it a 4.3. I don't think it was quite that high. It was kind of generic in the end. It is the cool factor of we got Duke and we have Optimus Prime meeting up together. It's a good note to mention here that it does take place after Optimus gave up the Prime moniker. So in the last Transformers, we found out that he gave up the title, gave it to Alita, who then went back to Cybertron to fight the war. So he's just straight up Optimus at this point. He introduces himself that way to Duke. Energon universe is one universe, so it is important to know from like a continuity standpoint. But basically how this story goes, they're going after Tracker, who they believe is the only one who can fix Hound's transponder in order to re-link up with Optimus. Duke wants to speak with him, speak with his leader. That works. Tracker fixes it. Hound brings Optimus, meets up with Duke. They have their one-on-one. And as you can imagine, they're two good guys, right? So, of course, they hash it out. Same philosophy, same principles. And they come, not best of buds, but allies for sure. And Joes are going to support the Autobots wherever they can. Autobots are going to support the Joes wherever they can. So we have mutual agreement there and kind of an ally force. So that's fine. Then at the end here, we have our next target. And it's going to be Scarlet, interesting enough. Which I read through Scarlet. I thought that was some of the best stuff in the Energon universe. It was like Scarlet had one, Cobra Commander had one, Duke had one. There were a couple of these. And Scarlet, I think, was actually the best. And so they're going after her because she has a weapon that is made out of Energon. And so with that, she's now a target, even though I really don't know the backstory on G.I. Joe. If she's like a good person or a bad person or in between, like, anti-hero type situation. It made it seem like she was a hero, but she's the target now moving forward for the Joes. So that's basically the cliffhanger there. So yeah, it's fine issue. Again, I gave it a 4, but I think people more gave it a higher score because of like, oh, how hype is that Optimus Prime met up with Duke, right? So you have finally the two main leads meeting up with one another in issue number 20. I mean, like, look at that full spread for, oh, I'm not even showing it on the main camera here. Look at that for like the main, full spread that you have between Duke and Optimus meeting each other in like the field. So pretty cool there. And then, here's where they basically just start hashing it out of like, yeah, we're the good guys too. We're going to work together. And then at the very end here, we have Scarlet listed as the next person of interest. So yeah, that is G.I. Joe issue number 20. Again, I gave it a 4. League gave it a 4.3. We now move into the trades here with Saga. Man, this one is a tearjerker. So we have issue number 53. I gave it a 4.5. League gave it a 4.7. This is an insane issue. Major spoilers taking place here. So I get it. It's issue 53 of Saga. So, quite far into this whole story. But we got Marco, Alana, and crew. They're all, it's like as close to that beach vacation, kind of arc that a lot of anime get. We're as close as you can possibly get to that. But the reporters, they want to do a write-up on Marco and Alana, and they said like, hey, our newspaper, they'll pay for basically a witness protection spell to give you. They decline, but Prince Robot and his lover, they're like, hey, we'll just go ahead and take it ourselves. But meanwhile, the diplomat and the Will, they show up on the planet. They're trying to kill them. One reporter's dead. And now, finally, everyone's kind of met up with one another, right? So the diplomat has Squire, takes Squire back to, I think it's Alana, the other reporter, and then you have the showdown, right, of all of them. And it's like, what the hell is going to happen here? It looks like Alana is about to fight the diplomat, but her wing is shot down. So now it's not looking like a good situation at all. But it's the other reporter who, his lover was killed. He goes up and is actually able to kill the diplomat. So the diplomat is now dead, which is huge. Now you have the Will, who is an assassin, who now is meeting up with Prince Robot, and apparently he was going to make a deal with him. Prince Robot was going to make a deal with the Will, even though Prince Robot killed the Will's lover, the Stalk. So they are off at the cliff somewhere. Marco then enters into the scene and says, hey, everyone else flew off the planet, which he's lying about, just to protect his family. So it's just us here. And so what basically the Will does is he grabs Prince Robot and he has a gun to his head. And so they keep negotiating back and forth on what to do from here. And the Will basically says, screw you and screw all of this. And he shoots Prince Robot, who we presume is now dead. And of course that is the cliffhanger. Like, holy shit. Absolutely nuts. This main character, one of the main characters of this series, is now dead. Absolutely nuts. So, at least presumed to be. We'll see if it actually happens or not. So, wild cliffhanger. I could not believe that happened. I think we have one more issue in this volume. And then that's it. So, we'll see where it all kind of ends up from here. But this is where that fight is starting to take place. Alana's going in for the help. You got the other reporter, boom, who's able to take out the diplomat and kill her there. And then the Will has Prince Robot, and boom. Oh, I thought he shot him. He actually rips off his head from on top of his body. Insane. And then, yeah, we have one more issue in this volume. So what looks like a happy-go-lucky little volume. From the front cover here, we have Marco, Hazel, and Alana taking like a family photo. Is like, oh my gosh, crazy violent, over the top, as it always is with Saga. So incredible. We're gonna keep reading that one for sure. Obviously insane. So Saga issue 53, I gave it a 4.5. Lee gave it a 4.7. Next up here is going to be Poison Ivy issue number 21. So I gave this one a 4. Lee gave it a 4.3. I think it was definitely between 4 and 4.5 for sure. This is the end of the origin story of Poison Ivy in kind of the standard DC universe. So we had her origin up to the point of how she met Dr. Woodrow and kind of fell in love with him, fell in love with the project. We met Bella, who was another student, and she was screwing around with her as well. Got to the point where the project was super desperate, and Woodrow was like, hey, are either one of you actually going to take the risk here and inject this stuff on yourself? And so Pam, or Poison Ivy, decides that yes, she will. And that was a cliffhanger. This issue takes the injection. Of course, it goes poorly. She has like a very horrible reaction to it, ends up in the hospital. But sure enough, it takes hold, and now effectively she is Poison Ivy and can feel the green calling out to her and just screaming. So she wakes up in the hospital and sneaks out and heads straight towards Gotham, because that's where the green is screaming at her the most. And she basically becomes Poison Ivy at this point, doing a whole bunch of evil stuff. So finally, Batman and Bat Family catch her, send her to Arkham, and she gets like in and out, and sneaks out, and is manipulative, and is lying. And then it gets interesting, because then she starts to talk to Batman one time that she breaks out. And she's trying to convince him of like, hey, just think about it. All these corporate interests completely destroying the world, right? From all the environmental issues to, all the corporate greed. And like, look how it's destroying the planet. And like, you and I could work on this together, but they're super close. And so Batman just assumes she's using her pheromones on him to sway him, but she actually wasn't. And so with that, he just doesn't believe her. And it's like, you're not going to manipulate me, and loses her opportunity to potentially team up with Batman, at least in that moment anyways. So after all that, she snaps back in too. So that was all. Think of it, right before you die, your memories coming back. That's what that situation was, but she ends up not dying. Snaps back into reality where she is presently, and you had a whole bunch of these different zombies that she infected coming towards her, and then I guess it's like a projection of Woodrow was expelled from her, and that's what looked like it killed her. Then we get the origin, so now we're right back into that scene there of like this near-death experience. And this is going to, I assume, wrap everything up here. So yeah, I mean, good issue. I enjoyed it. Let's see if we could show this off. This is all from the 4th volume trade here. Let's see. Is this it? Yes. Let's start here as we flip through. So the injection, and then it's starting to take hold. She gets hospitalized after this, and then ends up in Gotham. From here is where she's sent down to Arkham, starts breaking out, and then starts having those conversations with Batman, trying to convince him, but she won't listen. This is where she's brought back into the real world now, and now is about to face off against, I guess it's a projection of Woodrow. I don't know if it's actually himself. But look at this splash. This is going to be the cover for the next issue here. So, pretty cool. That is Poison Ivy. Issue number 21. I gave it a 4. Lee gave it a 4.3. And then 2 more here. We have Echolands. Probably put it this way, but this is like our longer format, almost like comic strip style book. This is issue number 5. I gave it a 4. League gave it a 4.3. This one, I'm actually surprised Lee gave it such a high score because this feels like the calm before the storm. We got this group of bandits trying to escape the wizard. Wizard sent their daughter after them. They end up at this, I guess almost like, I don't know, like a hut or something like that. They find this alien there. He's basically been preparing for this. He says, like, he speaks to the gods. The gods tell him to gather all this stuff because someone's going to need it eventually. One of those items being this rocket ship. And now the gang's trying to decide, where do we go to escape the wizard? Trying to chase them down, going to get back this stone or this gem. And so this issue is a conversation with each one of the party to try to decide what they're going to do, right? So one had a lover that died, maybe wants to go home, but is not entirely sure. The others, they escaped from a city. Maybe they go back to that city, but they're just going to continue to be persecuted. The other 2 are like the main 2, and it's like they're trying to decide, like, let's just go to Horror Hill. Let's make our final stand. And at Horror Hill is basically where the wizard has killed a whole bunch of people. And they're like, we can go there, potentially resurrect everyone, make our last stand there, and fight the wizard. So that's what they decide to do. They're going to take the rocket ship, and then that's going to be the conclusion of Echolands here. Meanwhile, the wizard is now on the hunt himself. So it's been his daughter the entire time. Now the wizard is cleaning up behind her. The daughter was injured in this last battle. Looks like now they finally caught up. On top of that, our main character had a boyfriend who we were just at their like island. We presumed he was dead. Turns out he's alive, and he is at like the little hut where the rocket ship is being hidden as well. So we'll see how that conflict ends up resolving in issue number 6 also. So yeah, it's kind of a cool book, an interesting story. I straight up just ended up buying this because of how the cover looks. Talk about judging a book by its cover. That was me, 100% guilty on this one, but I'm glad I did. It's more of an art showpiece, but it's pretty cool. Oh yeah, the other piece that happens in this too is one of the party members got split up, and he ends up in this robot island. He's trying to leave and escape, and they basically say, like, all right, this one robot can take you, but he can no longer be part of our AI, and he's basically going to sacrifice himself to bring them out. So that also happens as well. I'm sure he's going to be joining the fight some way, somehow, at Horror Hill as well. So yeah, that is Echolands, issue number 5, and then here's where the wizard meets up with his daughter finally. I gave it a 4. Lee gave it a 4.3. And then last but not least is going to be Fables, issue number 62. This is finally the conclusion of this one, which is cool. It's a 12-part book that we had going here. So the big fight takes place in this one. Difficult to catch you up on everything that's happening here. Obviously not a good point to jump in at the very last issue of this trade. And to be honest, I don't think I'm going to recommend the trade in the end. But what we have is this final fight. We got Peter Pan, basically, who's working with Tink, is trying to take over this forest in particular. We got Jack in the Green, who has a claim to the forest. You got this werewolf family that has a claim. And you got this demon that is released from these like boxes that has a claim as well. And so they're like, hey, whoever saves the forest, you guys end up getting the to be the ruler. And so the werewolf, he was injured and hurt. Looks like he's going to be down and out. The demon, his son was killed, and he looks like he's been taken out of the equation. Now it's just Jack in the Green. Has Peter in his sights with the arrow drawn back. That was the end of last issue. Issue 162 is Peter's now staring down at this arrow. He's got Tink by his side, and he's like, Tink, what are we going to do? You got to take him out. And Tink doesn't want to listen to him, but is forced to. And Tink's like, yeah, I could easily take her out, but by the time she releases the arrow, there's nothing that's going to stop the arrow from killing you. Like, I could take her out, but I'm just not going to get to her in time. And like, they're trying to process a whole bunch of different ways on how to be able to do it. And so what happens is basically Peter like loses it and he goes to attack. She releases the arrow and it doesn't intentionally go for Peter. Peter ducks out of the way, going for Tink the whole time. So Tink has this like force field around her, breaks the force field. With that, breaks the spell and the hold that Peter has on Tink. So Tink gets released and turns to this huge grotesque monster, grabs Peter and just takes him, and basically takes him to, I guess, hell is really what it is, and just ends up torturing him for decades upon decades on end for all the torture that Peter has done to Tink. So that are taken out of the equation. And then beyond that, it's like an all's well that ends well type of story. So the werewolf family, the guy's immortal, but he's starting to heal. And they're like, just shove all the organs back in me and I'll end up healing properly. Just make sure I don't heal and it's all sewn up without the organs inside me. So that's what they do. And he ends up being fine. So he'll rule the forest along with Jack in the Green, and they'll do it jointly together. The demon left to go and find like a different realm or a different forest altogether. The werewolf children, they all grew up and ended up being fine. Everyone ends up being kind of okay in the end, except we didn't get a conclusion to the demon's son, who was like turned into all these grasshoppers. That's the only one we didn't get a conclusion to. The other small piece was like Cinderella, who was helping out. She ends up like, I think it's like almost like finding a new job in the government or like a new place where she's going to be able to help out. Something along those lines. But yeah, it's kind of a fine story in the end, but a little bit confusing if you don't understand, or I'm not doing a good job of explaining all the craziness that basically got us here in the first place. So go ahead and show off some of the artwork so you can go ahead and take a look here. This is, oh, no, that was the previous issue. Here we go. So this is, yes, where the arrow pointed at Tink, Jack in the Green lets it loose. This is where Tink is freed and then becomes like this enormous, huge, grotesque monster. Takes Peter and just goes ahead and flies off. And then here's where they start healing up the wolf, and we get basically a resolution as to everything that took place here. And so, yeah, it's a cool little story. I enjoyed it. Another one that I picked up of like, that one seems interesting, and I think it was on sale at the time. Let's go ahead and try it out, but I don't think I'd recommend it. Basically, the overarching thing is get a bunch of different fairy tales. If we told some like crazy over-the-top stories and altered their personalities, who they are, their interests, their motives, things along those lines, how would that all change and end up? So that's what makes it interesting, but I don't think the story and the artwork behind it puts it at a level of like a must read. So you can go ahead and skip this. So that's Fables issue 162. Overall for Fables for this trade, I'd probably give it a 4 out of 5. But this issue I gave it a 4. League gave it a 4 as well.
Nailed it. I know. Thank you. Moving on.
So yeah, that is it. Those are the reviews. Let's go ahead and just recap it real quick for all of you before we wrap things up with the polls for next week. So we had Absolute Batman issue number 18. We had Batman being able to take out Poison Ivy, but using a gun, which is kind of crazy. Doesn't quite kill her, but he does take her out. Then the Ultimates issue number 22. This was the comic of the week. We have Captain America taking out Red Skull, which is Bucky, even though he didn't want to. Kill All Immortals II issue number 3. We have the Asgardians going after the Khan family, but they were betrayed, and now one of them is injured. The Power Fantasy issue number 16. Eliza nearly blows up the world, but Valentina goes back to the past to set up a new timeline. G.I. Joe issue number 20, we have Optimus and Duke meeting and setting up their alliance. Saga issue number 53, crazy one where the diplomat is dead, and Prince Robot as well. Poison Ivy issue number, I think it was 21, we have Poison Ivy, who's now been injected, and basically her full origin story. Tries to team up with Batman, but that doesn't work, and now brought back to reality to fight a version of Woodrue. Echolands issue number 5, we have the whole gang trying to decide their next plan. They're going to go to Horror Hill and try to summon everyone the wizard has killed to fight him off. Then Fables issue 162, we have Peter finally stopped, Tink is freed, and then the werewolf and Jack and the Green are ruling the forest together. Everyone gets a nice little happy ending. So that's it, folks. Those are the books. I hope you enjoyed the show. We'll flip to the polls for next week real quick. We are locked and loaded with a small number, just 6 overall, and one of them is a trade. So Batman Dark Patterns, I kept hearing really good things about, so I was thinking about just picking up the whole thing there. But we had Absolute Superman issue number 18, The Autumn Kingdom, The Wraithbound Queen issue number 3, and then Batman Dark Patterns, like I mentioned, it's a $30 book. So is this volume 1 and 2? Yeah, it looks like it. So it's volume 1 and 2 together. So that'll work out good. And then we have Daredevil issue number 1. So I pre-ordered that. It'll just be Daredevil. I haven't read a Daredevil book, believe it or not, even though I know one of the runs is like considered one of the best of all time. So that'll be my first time jumping in there. Royals issue number 1, which is an Image independent book. It looks like it's like a card counting casino thing. So that looks kind of cool. And then X-Men issue number 28. So those will be the polls for next week. So yeah, I'll try to get that Omega out. We'll just see where everything brings me, you know. Life is life right now, so just got to take care of those priorities. But either way, gonna still try to keep the show going as best as I possibly can. If you enjoyed it, you can check out the social media channels below. And on top of that, if you'd like to support the show monetarily, there's a link down there, buymeacoffee.com/saturdaymorningcbreview. All proceeds would go towards buying some more books. So if you're interested in that, that is the place you can do it. But yeah, I think we will go ahead and wrap it up. So thanks again for tuning in. I greatly appreciate it. And I will see you guys in the next one. Go, 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 go.
This has been a DMW production. Thanks for stopping by.